Gene Hackman disappeared in silence, with no applause, no farewell from those who had once praised him. But why? Why did Hollywood, the very industry that had once placed him on a pedestal, let him fade away like a forgotten name? Robert Duvall knew, he had always known, and when he finally broke his silence, the truth left everyone stunned. Gene Hackman didn't leave due to old age. He didn't retreat into seclusion because he was tired of fame. He was forced to leave. Hollywood had no place for him anymore. Those who once called him a legend quietly turned their backs, and when Robert Duvall finally spoke out, saying what no one else dared, it wasn't just heartbreaking. It was so brutal it couldn't be put into words. What was the truth behind Gene Hackman's disappearance? Who pushed him out of the game, and why? Until the very end, he never looked back. If you find the story of Gene Hackman and his mysterious disappearance truly intriguing, don't forget to hit like, share this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more exciting videos. Now, let's dive into the story. Robert Duvall stared at the camera, his face calm to the point of being inscrutable, yet in his aging eyes, there was something undefinable, a quiet sadness, an unspoken regret, or perhaps something far more complex. For decades, he had remained silent, refusing to speak about Gene Hackman, a man once seen as an untouchable giant of Hollywood. But today, Robert Duvall finally broke that silence, and what he said shocked the entire film industry. Robert Duvall and Gene Hackman were never close friends. They didn't drink together or spend time playing golf like many other colleagues in Hollywood. Yet, there was always an unspoken respect between them. Both were humble, reserved figures in Hollywood's golden era, individuals who didn't need charm or showmanship to prove their worth. They began as unknown actors in supporting roles, emerging from the shadows with a commanding presence, conveying fear and respect without the need for words. Gene Hackman and Robert Duvall may not have been close friends, but they understood each other in a way that few in the industry could. For years, Duvall never spoke publicly about Hackman. No compliments, no anecdotes, not even a mention in interviews. Whenever asked, he would just smile and avoid the question, or stay silent. This silence lasted for so long that it became a mystery in itself. Was there an underlying conflict between them, or did Duvall simply not care to discuss his colleague in trivial conversations? But when Gene Hackman passed away, Duvall finally spoke out, and what he revealed left everyone in disbelief. On March 7th, the film industry was shaken by the heartbreaking news. Gene Hackman passed away at the age of 95. He died at his home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where he spent the final years of his life, far from the glamour and allure of Hollywood. Medical reports confirmed that he passed away due to severe heart complications caused by high blood pressure and late-stage Alzheimer's disease. However, what made his death even more haunting was that his wife, Betsy Arakawa, had passed away just a week earlier from a rare illness, H-virus-induced pulmonary syndrome, a disease transmitted through rodents. When authorities entered their home, they discovered chilling details. Hackman's body was found in a small entryway near the kitchen, while his wife was in the bathroom with a bottle of pills spilled on the floor next to her. Their loyal dog, Xena, one of their 3 beloved pets, was also found dead in the closet, while the other 2 animals had survived. Hackman's death was not only the loss of a Hollywood icon, but also raised a wave of unanswered questions. How did he spend his final days? If he knew that his wife had passed before him, the world speculated, but Robert Duvall didn't. He didn't ask what had happened. Instead, he thought about the past, about the era that Hackman represented. Robert Duvall broke his silence in an exclusive interview after the news of Hackman's passing. Duvall spoke about the man he had remained silent about for many years. His voice was steady, without sentimentality or dramatic flair. He didn't cry, didn't show pain, but each word he spoke carried an undeniable weight. "He was the toughest man I've ever known. Not just on screen, but in real life," Duvall said. Hackman wasn't just a tough character on screen, he was a hard man. The man was almost a mistake. A former Marine, military discipline followed him throughout his life. But it was that toughness that made him lonelier. You know, some people like to be liked. Gene didn't care. He never sought admiration, never needed recognition. He skipped award ceremonies, turned down interviews, and lived life his own way. Maybe that's why he and I never became close, because we were too much alike. Gene Hackman left behind an extraordinary film career, contributing to some of cinema's classic works. His most unforgettable roles, from Popeye Doyle in The French Connection to Little Bill Daggett in Unforgiven, saw him never shy away from playing ruthless, cruel, or morally ambiguous characters. However, Robert Duvall wasn't concerned with listing Hackman's best films. What's important is that Hackman brought a spirit to Hollywood that no longer exists. Today's actors don't have what Hackman had. He wasn't just an actor, he was the character itself. Today, Hollywood is filled with handsome faces, polished performances, and technically skilled actors, but few bring the raw, undeniable authenticity that Hackman did. That's why his departure wasn't just the loss of a man, but the end of an era. After Robert Duvall's interview was published, there was little reaction from the Hollywood veterans. Clint Eastwood, still making films into the 90s, remained silent. Dustin Hoffman, Warren Beatty, Jack Nicholson, all of them said nothing. Perhaps they understood that there was nothing left to say. A legend had passed. A generation was fading, and no tribute, no obituary, no reminiscing could change that. Robert Duvall looked up at the new Gene Hackman, one of Hollywood's greatest actors, suddenly stepped away from the spotlight and chose a life of seclusion in Santa Fe, New Mexico. His decision not only shocked fans, but also raised questions about the real reason behind his departure from the film industry. Over his career spanning more than 4 decades, Hackman made his mark with unforgettable performances in films like The French Connection, Unforgiven, and The Royal Tenenbaums. He won 2 Oscars, and was considered one of the most talented actors of his generation. However, in 2004, Hackman unexpectedly announced his retirement after starring in Welcome to Mooseport. In an interview with Larry King, he stated that he had no future film projects lined up and believed his acting career had come to an end. After leaving Hollywood, Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. They chose a peaceful life, away from the noise of the entertainment industry. Hackman spent his time writing and painting. He published several novels and became involved in local art activities. Although he no longer appeared on screen, he kept in touch with a few old colleagues but rarely attended public events. Hackman's departure from the spotlight wasn't just a simple retirement, it was a complete disappearance from the public eye. He didn't attend any events, declined interviews, and never said a formal goodbye to his fans. This silence has led to much speculation about the real reason behind Gene Hackman's departure from Hollywood. Some believe that he simply wanted to enjoy a quiet life after many years of dedication to his craft, while others speculate that the reason may be tied to personal issues or health concerns. Robert Duvall and Gene Hackman were once close friends early in their careers, sharing a small apartment in New York with Dustin Hoffman when the 3 of them were young, ambitious actors. Their friendship was built on mutual respect and a shared passion for the arts. However, over time, their paths diverged, and they gradually grew apart. Nevertheless, Duvall always held deep respect for Hackman, and that sentiment was mutual. When Hackman decided to leave Hollywood and retreat into solitude, Robert Duvall remained silent about his friend's decision. He never made any public comments about Hackman's departure or his current life. This silence sparked much speculation in the media and among fans. Some believed that Duvall knew the real reason behind Hackman's disappearance, but chose to respect his friend's privacy. Others hypothesized that there may have been a falling out between them that led to the distance between them. Many theories have emerged about why Gene Hackman chose to leave Hollywood and live in seclusion. One of the most common assumptions is that he wanted to escape the noise and pressure of the entertainment industry. Instead, he opted for a peaceful life with his wife and beloved dogs. Some reports suggest that Hackman faced health challenges, including heart issues and late-stage Alzheimer's disease, which may have influenced his decision. However, given Hackman's private nature, these claims have never been officially confirmed. In Santa Fe, Hackman lived with his wife, Betsy Arakawa, and their 3 dogs. They led a simple life, staying away from the public eye. Their neighbors rarely saw them, and they didn't participate in local social activities. The presence of the dogs in their home reflected Hackman's love for animals and his desire for a peaceful, uncomplicated life. A maintenance worker arrived at Gene Hackman's home in Santa Fe, but received no response at the door. This raised concern, as Hackman had long been known as a reclusive man with strict discipline. He never changed his daily routine. When the neighborhood security team was called, they discovered a haunting scene: 2 lifeless figures inside. More than 2 decades after Gene Hackman left Hollywood without a word of farewell and never returned, the question still lingers in the hearts of his fans. Why accept the simple explanation that he just wanted to enjoy a peaceful life away from the spotlight? They believed Hackman had reached his peak and simply didn't want to continue. But after his passing, another truth began to emerge. A truth that only those closest to him knew. If you find the story behind the spotlight and the mysteries of Gene Hackman's life intriguing, leave a comment with the number 1. If not, leave a comment with the number 0. Now, let's continue the story. Then Robert Duvall broke his silence in a rare interview following Hackman's death. Duvall said something surprising. Gene didn't leave because he wanted to. He was forced to. A short statement, but it immediately caused a stir. It revealed a chilling reality. Hackman didn't just leave the spotlight by choice. He was pushed out of Hollywood. Why would an actor with 2 Oscars, someone who could command every frame with just a glance, be forced to leave? Who made the decision, and what was the real reason? When asked for more details, Duvall paused for a long moment as if struggling with himself, but then he gave a faint smile and said, "Hollywood is a business, and when you don't play by its rules, you know how it goes." A vague answer, yet meaningful. Those who have followed Gene Hackman for a long time know that he was never easy to manage. Hackman was a master actor, but he was not one to easily follow the system's rules. He turned down countless scripts, despite being offered high pay, simply because he didn't like the content or didn't feel the character was right for him. He despised the pretense of Hollywood, hated the lies and glossy interviews, and loathed the flattery. He wasn't afraid to clash with directors, even the most powerful producers. Once, Hackman bluntly told a famous producer, "I don't care how much you pay me. I won't do your movie if it's trash." A statement that clearly shows his nature. Never compromising, and that's the problem. Hollywood doesn't like people like Hackman. They prefer obedient actors who know how to listen, who can play the political game, who know how to show up at glamorous parties and say pleasant things to the media. Hackman didn't do that. However, throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, Hollywood had to endure Hackman because he was too talented to be discarded. But by the 2000s, as new generations of actors emerged and studios began changing their operations, they no longer needed Hackman, and thus, the Hollywood machine began to turn its back on him. This didn't happen overnight. Hackman's removal was gradual, subtle, in true Hollywood style. Quality scripts slowly stopped coming his way. Hackman began receiving fewer and fewer offers, and the roles he was offered were no longer as appealing as before. Major projects began to overlook him, and directors he was once close to stopped inviting him. Those who had worked with Hackman, from Francis Ford Coppola and Clint Eastwood to new generation directors, gradually stopped collaborating with him. He was forgotten by the media, with no more articles praising him, no exclusive interviews, no more accolades that other legends regularly received. Then came the climax. Hackman completely disappeared. No one knew where he was. No one knew what he was doing. There was no farewell to Hollywood, no official event marking his departure. He simply left. If anyone knew the truth, it was Robert Duvall. The two had been roommates, had gone through the toughest years together, and understood each other more than anyone else. And while they may not have been close in the way of best friends, they always knew what the other was doing, where they were. So, when Hackman disappeared, Duvall surely knew the real reason, but for many years, he chose silence. "Some things are better left unsaid," Duvall said, and that only made everything more mysterious. The final question remains, did Hackman truly decide to leave Hollywood, or was he pushed out by a system he challenged with his tough nature? Hackman may have seen it coming. He might have known that Hollywood would never let him survive once he was no longer at the top. And instead of becoming a faded star, he proactively vanished and left before they could push him out in disgrace. But no matter what the story is, one thing is certain. Hollywood no longer has anyone like Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman was not a perfect legend. He was not the type of actor everyone loved, admired by his peers, or the kind of star everyone wanted to work with. If there was one thing that set him apart from other actors of his time, it was his brutal honesty, sometimes to the point of harshness. Hollywood may honor talent, but it has no place for those who are difficult to work with, and Hackman was likely one of them. While those who worked with him acknowledged his genius on screen, behind the scenes, he could be a nightmare. One of the most infamous stories about Hackman is his incident with director Wes Anderson during the making of the Royal Tenenbaums in 2001. Anderson was known for his meticulous, soft-spoken, and somewhat eccentric style, which was the complete opposite of Hackman's blunt, intense demeanor and impatience with anything he considered frivolous on set. Hackman wasn't shy about criticizing Anderson, even berating him in front of the entire cast and crew. According to several sources, he called Wes Anderson an idiot and told him to pull up his pants and act like a man. This remark quickly became one of the most infamous in Hollywood. Bill Murray, a longtime friend and collaborator of Anderson, had to step in to defend the young director. While the specifics of what Murray said to Hackman remain unclear, witnesses recall that the atmosphere on set was very tense whenever Hackman was nearby, and Anderson did everything he could to avoid him. To this day, Wes Anderson has never publicly spoken about his experience working with Hackman, but one can look at his frequent collaborators like Bill Murray, Owen Wilson, and Willem Dafoe to see the pattern. Hackman never returned to any of Anderson's projects again. Hackman's intensity wasn't limited to young directors. Even the toughest veterans of Hollywood admitted that he wasn't easy to deal with. Clint Eastwood, who worked with Hackman in Unforgiven in 1992, had a relationship with him that was both respectful and distant. While Eastwood never publicly criticized Hackman, he subtly hinted at the actor's challenging nature. Once, when asked about Hackman in an interview, Eastwood simply smiled and gave a cryptic response. "Gene is intense, don't mess with him." For someone like Clint Eastwood, who had faced some of Hollywood's toughest challenges and worked with some of the most difficult actors in history, that remark spoke volumes. Hackman never cared for nostalgia. He didn't attend cast reunions, rarely spoke about past films, and never tried to build a lovable public image. But in a rare interview in 2004, he admitted, "Sometimes I've been tough on people, maybe too tough." But even then, he didn't apologize, offer any excuses, or justify himself. He simply accepted that this was who he was. That was his character. The reason he was pushed aside is now becoming clearer. Hollywood didn't just push Hackman out because he refused to play by the rules. They pushed him out because he wasn't the kind of person people wanted to work with in an industry where networking and diplomacy are crucial for longevity. Hackman defied it all. He despised flattery, had no interest in making friends within the industry, and didn't care about pleasing anyone. And when Hollywood found enough reasons to push him aside, they didn't hesitate. But one thing they could never deny is that Gene Hackman remains one of the greatest actors in history. And no matter how difficult he may have been, his performances will forever be legendary. Hollywood is a harsh world. It can elevate someone to legendary status and just as easily push them into oblivion, and Gene Hackman is just one of the victims of this cruel rule. Robert Duvall didn't just mention Hackman as an exception. He saw it as a warning about what happened to Hackman, something that could happen to anyone. Duvall once said, "Hollywood will pat you on the back when you're on top. Then the moment you start to falter, they'll turn their back on you without hesitation." Gene Hackman was once one of the greatest actors in the world. He had it all: a brilliant career, prestigious awards, and the respect of his peers. But then, as if a secret signal was sounded, Hollywood decided his time had passed. Hackman likely understood that as well. He didn't try to cling to fame, didn't seek a final role to make amends with the public. He simply vanished. But the question is, why? Did Hollywood push him out because he was too old? Or because he no longer fit with the new trends? Or were there past conflicts that made Hollywood no longer want to keep him? No one knows for sure, but one thing is certain. Hackman was not the only one in this situation. Hackman is just one name in a long list of legends abandoned by Hollywood. Jack Nicholson was once a symbol of madness and wild energy on the screen, but after The Bucket List in 2007, he almost disappeared. Some say he couldn't remember his lines, others say he lost interest in acting, but whatever the reason, Hollywood didn't keep him. Robert Redford, a legend of the 70s and 80s, also quietly retired after The Old Man and the Gun in 2018. He said it was a beautiful ending, but did he truly want it that way? Or did Hollywood no longer have a place for him? Dustin Hoffman, one of the greatest actors of all time, faced a scandal regarding inappropriate behavior in 2017. Since then, he has completely disappeared from major projects. There's a common thread here. Hollywood never lets anyone stay too long. Perhaps one day the big names of today, like Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, and Tom Cruise, will also be left behind, just like Hackman, Nicholson, and countless other legends. When asked about Hackman, Duvall simply said, "Gene understood the truth, but perhaps it was too late." Maybe Hackman doesn't regret leaving Hollywood, but perhaps he regrets not realizing sooner that Hollywood was never truly his home. No matter how talented he was, no matter how much he contributed, at some point, Hollywood will turn its back, and when that happens, there are only two choices: fight or disappear. Hackman chose to disappear, and perhaps that was the best choice he ever made. Gene Hackman was not just an actor. He was an icon, a symbol of a generation of strong, fearless, uncompromising men ready to speak their minds. But then he left without a word of farewell. Without any official announcement, he simply disappeared as if he had never existed. And when Hackman left, a true era came to an end. Gene Hackman belonged to a different generation, one where men didn't have to explain themselves too much. They weren't the type to sit in front of a camera, trying to build a perfect image in the eyes of the public. They didn't care about Twitter posts, social media, or self-promotion tricks. They had one principle: let their work speak for itself. Clint Eastwood, the man with cold, silent eyes, yet strong. Robert Duvall, who could turn any character into a symbol of power. Paul Newman, who brought an unmistakable elegance and charm. And Gene Hackman, an old lion always ready to roar even when the world turned its back. They didn't need to act when they stepped off the set. They lived true to themselves, never pretending to be friendly, never trying to please anyone. But that era has ended. If you look at Hollywood today, one thing is very clear. It is no longer a place for people like Hackman. Hollywood is now a place of meticulously crafted images, carefully worded speeches, and meticulously planned personal promotional campaigns. It's a place where actors must become public figures, always careful with every word, every gesture, every moment that is recorded. Gene Hackman could not live in that world. He was the kind of person who didn't need to be friendly with anyone just to keep his place. If he didn't like someone, he would say it plainly. If he thought a director was doing poorly, he wouldn't hesitate to criticize them to their face, and that's why Hollywood pushed him to the sidelines. Duvall once admitted, "Hollywood is no longer what it used to be. It's no longer a place for the stubborn, the unyielding. We used to have a Hollywood where legends like Hackman, Eastwood, Newman, and Duvall could dominate the screen without worrying about the industry's political games. But today, that is no longer true. Gene Hackman is not the only one to disappear in this way. But what makes him unique is that he never tried to make a comeback. Jack Nicholson still occasionally appears at basketball games. Robert Redford, although retired, still works as a producer, and Dustin Hoffman may no longer land leading roles, but he still appears at some events. But Hackman, he vanished completely. There was no grand comeback, no final film to say goodbye to the audience, no memoir recounting the glory days. He simply slipped away quietly. But even though he chose to disappear, what he left behind are films like The French Connection, Unforgiven, Mississippi Burning. Everything still remains as a reminder that there once was a Gene Hackman who was irreplaceable. When Hackman left, he didn't just leave Hollywood, he closed the door on an entire era. Today, we still have great actors, but we no longer have people like Hackman. They don't make a Gene Hackman anymore. There may be more talented actors, there may be those who excel in adapting to the new era, but a man who is straightforward, humble, and uncompromising, like Hackman, is something Hollywood has lost forever. And perhaps Hackman understood that. Perhaps that's why he left. Not because he no longer loved cinema, not because he lacked the ability to act, but because Hollywood was no longer a place for him. When Robert Duvall said that Hollywood is no longer what it used to be, he wasn't just talking about Hackman. He was speaking about an entire generation, a generation of men of steel, unafraid, who dared to live true to themselves. Gene Hackman was one of the last of that generation, and when he left, a true era came to an end. Gene Hackman never had an official farewell to Hollywood, and perhaps that was his style. A man who didn't need to boast, didn't need grand recognition, and didn't need a final movie for the audience to remember him by. He simply left, and that made his absence even more memorable than ever. Hollywood may have turned its back on Hackman, but his films remain. His performances are still sharp, still powerful, still a reminder that there was once a man who never bowed down to anything, both on and off the screen. If you're surprised by the mysterious story surrounding Hollywood star Gene Hackman's life, don't forget to hit like, share the video, and leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exciting videos. See you in the next one.